Do a review on Likutei Sichos in Chelk Chof, volume 20. We're doing the second Sicha of the portion of Vayechi. The Rebbe discusses the Rashi, which brings down the Shvatim, the tribes, Yaakov's sons who carried his coffin to from Mitzrayim to Eretz Canaan to be buried in the Moras Machpelah. So he set up a place, but two sons did not carry, not Yosef and not the tribe of Levi. And the Rebbe and the Rashi gives the reason because he was a king Yosef, and Levi is going to carry the Oren. And the Rebbe asks, but the pasuk says Mefedish that Yaakov asked Yosef to carry him. So how could he not fulfill his father's command? And the Rebbe explained that Yosef, that the Menashe and Ephraim substitute them was their shaliach, and because it was a shaliach, so it's as if they were carried. The Rebbe asks, what's the connection between Levi and Mele, Menashe, and Ephraim are children of Yosef, but how do they substitute for the tribe of Levi? The Rebbe asks, but Moshe Rabbeinu did carry the bones of, Moshe Rabbeinu, who was a Levi, carried the bones of Yosef himself after they left Mitzrayim. So it's not a contradiction. Being a Levi carries the Aaron, and Yosef and Moshe was from the Bnei Kahos, those who carry the Aaron. So the Rebbe goes through all these different things and explains how the idea of Golus is not really applicable to Yosef and Levi, and how still that is part of the goals, part of the whole plan. As the Rebbe will explain, we'll go step by step. Aleph. If pasuk Vayisu oisei bonav, on the verse that his sons carried him, as the Bnei Yaakov hom getrogen Yaakov's oren arzo Canaan, that Yaakov's sons carried Yaakov's coffin to the land of Canaan. Is Rashi Mavadim Seder v'zehom getrogen dem oren. So Rashi explains the order, how they positioned themselves when they were carrying, how they carried the coffin, the oren. Kovalahem Mokim Gimel Lemizrach. He set up a place for them, 3 to the east side of the coffin. V'chein la'ar beruchis, same to the 4 different sides, so east, west, south, and north. And Rashi says, just as the order that when they journeyed in the desert, so there was the camps of the different flags. So there was 4 flags on the 4 sides, and the 4 sides, each flag had their separate tribes, the 3 per tribe. So this was the 3, and 3 was 12. A total of 12 tribes carried him. Rashi explains. 2 of the actual sons of Yaakov did not carry. The Noch is Rashi Mamshich. Rashi continues, as Yaakov atongizok, Yaakov instructed that Levi lo yiso shuosi losis esarin. Levi shall not carry, because he is going to be carrying the Orin later on in the Masa of the Bnei Kohos. They carried the Orin as they were journeying in the desert. And the Yosef lo yiso shu melech, and Yosef shouldn't carry because he's a king. And Rashi adds that Menashe and Ephraim yu tachtehim, that Menashe and Ephraim will be in their place, in their stead. So the place of Yosef and Levi was taken by Menashe and Ephraim. So how could it be that Yosef didn't carry when his father told him to carry? Darf man verstehen. Vishtim does was Yosef lo yiso. How does this fit that we're saying Yosef should not carry? Midam b'shtei beferish and posik. It says clearly in the verse, as Yaakov bashvorn Yosef, when Yaakov administered an oath to Yosef, unesasani mi Mitzrayim, you shall carry me from Egypt, which means as the chiyuv for Nisias Aron shel Yosef, that the obligation of carrying the coffin Aron shel Yaakov, the obligation to carry the coffin of Yaakov, is beikir of Yosef. It's mainly on Yosef. Is l'chayre zicher, so it seems for sure, it would seem for sure, as a darfton in them kechol shari, that he has to do all that is possible. Koilon Sasani Kipshute, including to carry it literally. So how does it fit with Yaakov telling him that Yosef Layisa Shehu Melech when he says to him, gave him a Shvu Sasani? And that's a question on Levi, but also on Yosef, but also a question is on Levi. Why would they not carry the coffin now? Because he's going to be carrying that would be much later after the Golus Mitzrayim and a long time later. So why is that a reason not to carry now? Especially we see that Levi did carry the coffin of Moshe Rabbeinu, who was a Levi, carried the coffin of Yosef. Also, with regards to Levi, we still need also explanation. The Nesias are in her Edus. Al Yidei Levi is the Chaninian Shebasit, carrying the Orin of the testimony that had the Luchas in it through Levi was a matter that takes place in the future, Harochik, in a distant. After the period they're going to enslave them and they're going to afflict them, etc., then they're going to go out of Mitzrayim and they're going to travel in the desert. Und dazu redt sich dort nicht wegen Levi Atzmei. Over there, we're not talking about that Levi didn't carry the order, it was his descendants. Nor wegen Yitzchak Halotzav, we're talking Yitzchak Halotzav will not carry. So why are we taking away now? That's going to be Adoir, Far V'Doir Revi, that's going to be later on. Says V'Doir Revi Yeshuva Heina, the fourth generation is going to go back to Eretz Yisrael, which the Yidden are going to after, but there's still going to be one before the fourth, which means it's a third generation. Why should he not be carrying the Oren now? Was they trogen the Oren? They're going to carry the Oren later on. Just one generation before the fourth generation. This is talking about the first generation over here. Talking about Yaakov and his sons. Pavos Zolmen, by Imtsunem and their far, the Nesius Aron. Why should they take away because of this carrying his father's coffin? Was Nesius Aron Mezbechlal is a mitzvah. Generally, carrying a coffin of a mace is a mitzvah. Ubefrat, especially Aron Shloviv, his father's orders. So why did it take this away from Levi? Because he's going to be carrying later on. So that's the Rebbe's question. So Yosef, we need to understand. He was specifically told by his father. And Levi, why would you take it away from him? So this proves to the Rebbe that they actually substituted with the Menashe and Ephraim. And that also explains, so it was as if they were a shliach of there, so it was as if they did it. And it also explains why Moshe Rabbeinu, who was a Levi, did carry the coffin of Yosef, as the Rebbe will explain. Is the Birbaz the explanation in this? Rashi himself answers this. Because Rashi adds, as Menashe and Ephraim, you tachteim. That Menashe and Ephraim will take their place. Their beit Rashi. With this, what Rashi means to say, nit nor as Menashe and Ephraim farnemen dem ord betzad ha'oren for Levi v'Yosef. It's not just that they're taking up the space at the side of the coffin, and Levi and Yosef weren't carrying. You need three on each side, so we put them in. Other or to mashlim zayin the mispar yud beis v'noison, to have 12 people carrying the oren. So just to be in the proper places, so to have the number 12. But nor what Rashi really means here, as izane tachteihem b'mikoimim, they're in their stead, in their place. Zeir shluchim, their agents. This haste. As those was Levi v'Yosef am nit getrogen arena shel Yaakov. This that Levi and Yosef did not carry the coffin of Yaakov is as nor b'negei legufam b'yideim kipshutei. It only is physically with their literally hands. They didn't carry him. Zeh haben aber mekayim the mitzvah for Nesias on Yaakov, but they did fulfill the mitzvah of carrying the Yaakov's coffin through their agents, who was actually like them. They carried it through their agents. And the Rebbe says, based on this interpretation, that's what Tachteim is coming to tell us, that they are actually taking the place, so that this is as if Levi and Yosef themselves are carrying. This explains another idea here. Rashi begins this with the words, Vayisu oisoi bonov. It says his sons carried him to carry the coffin. So Rashi says, V'loi b'nei bonov, but not his grandchildren, only the children, not the grandchildren. And Rashi immediately continues that Menashe and Ephraim did carry him. Menashe and Ephraim getrogen Aaron Yaakov, that they did carry the Aaron of Yaakov. So how could Rashi start off saying that his grandchildren didn't carry, only his sons, and immediately Menashe and Ephraim did carry? Now, Rashi is the reason why the grandsons shouldn't carry. And it seems like Rashi says that because they were born from Noshim women that Bnei Canaan, they married the Bnei Canaan. They didn't want any Egyptian, and didn't want any children that were born, any grandchildren that were born from the daughters of Canaan. But that would exclude Yosef's kids, which is Menashe and Ephraim, and they are the sons of Osnas Bas Potiphera in Mitzrayim. They weren't from the Bnei Canaan, so that would fit that. But still, it doesn't fit. The Rashi says nobody else but you. So okay, maybe it doesn't have the problem that they're not Bnei Canaan, so they could for that. But Yaakov wanted only his sons. How does his children carry him? He didn't want them to carry as independent, but he wanted their children. That was actually considered like Levi and Yosef were carrying through Menashe and Ephraim. So what's the question that we're asking? We're asking a question. He says like Bnei Bneihem, not the grandsons. And how does Rashi say that the grandsons did carry? And although, so Rashi explains it, what he meant not by the grandsons. He said, this is what he instructed them. I don't want any Egyptian carrying, and not one of their sons who is born from the daughters of Canaan. So therefore, that wouldn't be a problem for Menashe and Ephraim carrying, because they're not from Bnei Canaan. They're the sons of Osnas. Yaakov didn't only say the negative, I don't want any of the Egyptians, but he also wanted his sons, the positive. He says, V'rashi virtois, elatem, but you. So how did he have his grandsons, Menashe and Ephraim, carry it? Okay, they don't meet the criteria, they're not Bnei Canaan, but they're still not Atem. But here, the Baldo, beras dos vos Menashe v'Ephraim hom getrogen Aaron Yaakov. Since, however, this that Menashe and Ephraim were carrying Yaakov's coffin is given Tachtehem, was in their place, nor als Shluchim from Levi v'Yosef. They were agents of Levi v'Yosef. Is their meat ausgeführt geworden? So then that fulfilled the Vayisu oisei bonov atem, you, their sons, you're carrying him. This haste, their trogen is misyachiv, carrying. It relates to the Mishalchim, to those who sent Levi v'Yosef. It's not Menashe and Ephraim, it's Levi v'Yosef. With the Klal, was Rashi brings the as we know the rule, Rashi also brings it down in his commentary on the Torah, Shluchah Shalodom Kemaisei, an agent of a person is like him. So this is not really the grandsons. Atem, they don't have the negative, but they also have the positive, because they are Shluchim, and therefore that is considered like Levi and Yosef are carrying. Okay, but how, the Rebbe wants to know now, Menashe and Ephraim, Mela, they carry by some for Yosef, they're children of Yosef. How are they carrying for Levi. How could they take? Why are they a shliach shel kamoisa? What's the connection between Nash and Ephraim and Levi? Medarfa beverstein gimel. Well, anybody can make a shliach. It don't have to be from the same shevet. But b'pnimis inyanim, what is the idea over here? Gimel medarfa beverstein. In the inner matter of things, we need to understand. We understand that Menashe and Ephraim take the place instead of Yosef. Sons are in the place of their father. What is over the shaykhs from Menashe and Ephraim to Levi? What's the connection of Menashe and Ephraim to Levi? As his own zayin tachtov, that they should be instead of Levi. Seems like a not match over there. How are they tachto? How are they taking the place? They can take the place of Yosef, a son, is the place of the father. But what has it got connection to Levi? So the Rebbe is talking das Verstehen behagdim shailes hameforshim. By introducing the question of meforshim, they asked about Moshe Rabbeinu. How did Moshe Rabbeinu carry Yosef's coffin? The Divrei Rashi, Levi lo yisa. It says Levi shouldn't carry. Rashi says because he's going to carry the Oren Ha'edus in the desert in the future, so he shouldn't be carrying the coffin of Yaakov. Steht doch, but it says as Moshe getrogen Arena shel Yosef. It says that Moshe was carrying the coffin of Yosef, as the pasuk says very clearly, Vayikach Moshe satzmis Yosef, that Moshe took along the bones of Yosef with him. Moshe is doch gewend from Shevet Levi. Moshe was from the tribe of Levi. And dazu noch, not only was he from any of the tribes, but he was from Bnei Kos. He was of the sons of Kos who were carrying the Aron. So how could he carry it? So explaining this question, how could Yosef carry the coffin when he was from the Bnei Levi? Will understand the connection also between Menashe and Ephraim to the tribe of Levi. Is the Bir B'chozer. So the Rebbe explains that the tribes were higher than the Golos. As long as there was any of the tribes, then there was no Golos. And therefore, that connects to the idea of Levi. Let's see, because Levi was the last one of the tribes. Let's see in the inside. Dalet is the Bir B'chol Zeh. Says Yodua, it's known as Cholos Hashibud b'Mitzrayim, hat sich angefangen noch Petiras Yaakov. The beginning started after Yaakov's passing. Rashi zog b'tchilas haparsha. Rashi says in the beginning of the parsha that the parsha is stuma. So Rashi says that doesn't have a space between this and the previous parsha. Shekivon sheniftar Yaakov Avinu. That once our father Yaakov passed, nistamu eineim b'liban shel Yisrael mitzoros hashibud. So the eyes, the hearts of the Jewish people became closed, came stuffed up from the troubles of the enslavement. So they started to enslave them. Thus haste. That means that as long as Yaakov is being in Mitzrayim, Yaakov Zayin in Mitzrayim, with Obgal the Tzoros Hashibud, being there, he held back. So the trouble of enslavement did not take place as long as Yaakov was in Egypt. Yaakov's presence did not allow for the concept of exile in Egypt. As is nor given the Yerida Golus from Canaan. It was only the exile in Mitzrayim. They were in Golus, they were in Mitzrayim. It was a descent, Golus from Canaan, that they went to Mitzrayim. But the enslavement, the shibud, the tzoros shibud, that didn't take place for as long as Yaakov was alive. Kolzman Yaakov had gelebt, as long as Yaakov lived, had the Yidden gar nicht gefällt in Mitzrayim. The Yidden weren't lacking anything in Egypt. V'adrabah. Ve'etna lachem es tuv Eretz Mitzrayim Gemechel Ha'aretz. As Pari said to them that I'm going to give you the best, the good of the land of Mitzrayim, the fat of the land. So they had everything they need. The Funis Verstandig. So from this we understand that thus I raised them and Yaakov from Mitzrayim. Now when the fact that we take Yaakov out of Mitzrayim, we bring him the Kfur in Eretz Yisrael, to bury him in Eretz Yisrael, is given noch hashlav. That was another step. Hat Geirung given as Zolkenen Zayin der Golus V'Shibud Mitzrayim. This caused and allowed for it to be the exile, the enslavement of Egypt. So now we'll see the uniqueness of Levi v'Yosef as it comes through slavery. The Fizay's movement was Levi v'Yosef haben sich bepoil nicht mishtatev given. In actuality, even though they had representatives, but in actuality they did not participate in Nesias Aroina Shel Yaakov from Mitzrayim, in carrying Yaakov's coffin from Mitzrayim. And Akudim Mishutef is given by Levi v'Yosef. We find a common point by both, by Levi and Yosef. Was beides eine given hecher from the Inyan Hashibud b'Mitzrayim. They were both above the slavery of Mitzrayim. They also, the two of them, did not allow for the enslavement in Mitzrayim. So we find this a common point both by Yosef and Levi. Yosef state in Medrash, with regards to Yosef, it says in the Medrash, Yosef as long as Yosef was alive, they did not carry a load of Egypt. When Yosef died, that's when they put the load on them. So the Golus took another step, another deteriorating step with the death of Yosef. Aboyim says in the pasuk, this Yosef, when Yosef passed away, the pasuk says the one that came, as if that day they entered Mitzrayim. So we see that with Yosef's passing, it started really the slavery. That's from that medrash. Similar to Levi. When he gave Levi Zokt Rashi, as far as Levi, Rashi says, Lama nifnu shloisov shel Levi. Why were the days of Levi count? From that we learn how much they were actually in exile and how much they enslaved them. And Ledia Kama Yimei Shibud, to tell us how much days of the enslavement. Shekolzman Shechad Min Hashvotim Kaim. As long as one of the tribes was still alive, Lehoya Shibud was no slavery. Shenemar Vayomas Yosef B'chol Echov V'achkach Vayokom Melech Chodesh. So first it says Yosef and all of his brother died. And then it says a new king, so which means that the last one had to die. The last one, Levi Hedech Yomim Al Kulam, Levi lived longer than everybody else. So that means that Levi, as long as Levi lived, there was no Golus. Yosef didn't really, by Yosef's death, didn't really start fully the Golus, the Shibud, and also by Levi. He said to Mizeh, but by Levi we find unique, not only didn't it start until after Levi died fully, the Tzaras HaShibud, but also even after that, Levi's weren't enslaved. We say to Mizeh, Afilu b'negei l'shevet Levi, even as far as the tribe of Levi, Gefindt, we find as afilu noch dem das hat sich angefangen der Shibud b'koisha Shibud b'ali, even after it began, the enslavement and the difficulty of the enslavement by all Yidden is b'leches Shibud Mitzrayim l'hoisa shivta shel Levi, but the work of the enslavement of the Egyptians did not fall on the tribe of Levi. Levi got away. The tribe of Levi did not have to work hard as the rest of the Bnei Yisrael. So you see that Levi and Yosef are different. Yaakov didn't start at all. By Yosef, it started a little bit, but it was a new step until Yosef. By Levi, that's when as long as one of them lived, it didn't really start. And that's when it comes to Melech Chodesh and also the Levi. So there is an exemption seeming that Yosef and Levi are not part of it. Hey, so Apizei's move on those was Levi lo Yisro and Yosef lo Yisro. So now we understand why Levi shouldn't carry and Yosef shouldn't carry Arona Shel Yaakov. Because carrying the Arona Yaakov, about the Sidus Arona Yaakov from Mitzrayim, because what does it represent? Carrying the Yaakov's coffin from Mitzrayim is farbunden and goydem zum inyan hashibud. That is tied and brings about the idea of slavery with Yaakov's leaving Mitzrayim. So that has nothing Levi and Yosef are not part of making the Golus Mitzrayim, because they nicht Shibud Mitzrayim. They don't allow for Shibud Mitzrayim because Yosef doesn't allow and Levi doesn't allow. Und das is merumas in the time now. This is hinted in the reasons that Yaakov gave him. He says like this: Levi lo yisa shehu osid losis esorim. Levi should not carry because he is going to be carrying the oren. Going to be kind of oren aluchas, oren edus. But Yosef lo yisa shehu melech, and Yosef is a king. So before Shim Zogun. The Parshim say, as those was Melechas Hashibud is not given of Shiftei Shel Levi. Why did the work of the enslavement not apply to the tribe of Levi? Is mitzadem was asidim losis esarim, since they were going to be carrying the orin, and the Rebbe brings down the parenthesis. Shiftei Shel Levi chachamim hoyu. They were wise and they did not want to do work. They knew that they were going to carry the orin in the future. And that's why they were free. They didn't have to do the work. They were wise. They were smart. And they didn't want to do the work because they're going to carry the orin. So because they're carrying the orin, that exempt them, which means that losis is orin, didn't allow for the shibud. So the carrying of the, when he says Levi lo yiso shu osid losis is orin, he doesn't carry, he doesn't start the golus because that's why they're not working, is because their losses as oren. That exempts all the tribe of Levi. That's what Yosef is. That's what Yaakov is saying. That Levi lo yiso because los oren. And if you carry the oren, it doesn't allow for shibud. Der Chacham doesn't allow for shibud. Does Yosef hu melech? The other reason that he gives for Yosef. Why shouldn't Yosef carry? Yaakov says, he's hu melech. Hot Mitzrayim kein Schlittenit of him. So the Egypt doesn't dominate him. He doesn't start slavery for him. He dominates Egypt. He cannot be the slavery of Mitzrayim on Yosef. So that's why these are the reasons for them not carrying the coffin that brings about slavery. But bringing Yosef in the Midbar brings around freedom. As far as Yemoshe taking the bones of Yosef with him, this was the opposite. This was a condition, and this was a matter of redemption. Yosef made them swear, but Hashem will remember you. You will bring up my bones from here with you. Then this has a specific connection to the Levi, because the tribe of Levi is the tribe of Geula. They're not Shibud, going out of Mitzrayim, going in. Shevet Levi, to the head of Rosh Shevet Levi, Moshe Rabbeinu, Goyalam Shel Yisrael, and the Redeemer of Eden. So there is not a question why he didn't, because he was going in the opposite direction. He was going to Eretz Yisrael, Moshe Rabbeinu, and that's why over there Moshe Rabbeinu could be carrying. But here he says, Beferish, why doesn't he want Levi to carry it? Because he'll be carrying the Oren, which means, as we explained, they don't have slavery for the tribe of Levi. So that's why Levi should not carry the Oren of Yaakov. But Levi, no, because their idea is higher than Geula, and carrying Yaakov is the idea of going into Golus now, as the Golus starts with taking Yaakov out of Mitzrayim and bringing him into the Eretz Canaan. Nice Vav, the Rebbe is going to ask, So since we just explained so well that Levi and Yosef are not part of carrying Yaakov to start the Shibud because they are not, they represent the opposite of Shibud. So how come they needed representatives? Why did they need then for Menashe and Ephraim to take their place? And the Rebbe explains they're not Shibud. It's not that they're not part of Klal Yisrael, who's in Shibud. Within the Klal Yisrael, you have some that do the actual work, and then some which are above that enslavement. Let's look inside. Based on this, that they are not connected to Golus, Levi, and Shibud, Levi and Yosef. So we have to understand the other side. Bald as Levi Yosef seinen nit given Neuse on Yaakov from Mitzrayim. Since they weren't carrying the coffin of Yaakov from Egypt, Baldos is Hepech in Yonah, because this is opposite what they stand for. Levi not starting the Geula and carrying the Orin. And Yosef, there was no Gzeira because of a Melech, so it can't be slavery. Why did they need messengers? Why did they need agents? Menashe Ephraim, you tachteim, to take the place. And how could they have shluchim like them? If they have shluchim like them, so then, so what's the benefit of them not carrying it? So again, Yosef and Levi are carrying it because the shluchim are kamoisam. So how do you get out of this? You have both ways. You have shluchim kamoisam, and you're not carrying it. I've explained that. So we'll understand this by introducing the question. Since there was a decree during the covenant between the pieces, that your seed will be a stranger in the strange land. They will work them, enslave them, and inflict them for 400 years. How come that there was a tribe where the work of enslavement didn't apply to them? Could it be that a tribe like the tribe of Levi not to be part of this whole covenant, which Hashem promised that there's going to be an enslavement, and they're not? Nochmer. Furthermore, in them Shibud is doch gewent luidaf tochav achri ken yetzu b'rechush godel. It hinged on in the fact that they are enslaved, then they have the promise that they'll go out with a great fortune. Rashi as Rashi brings down, so that righteous person, meaning Avram, will argue. The Eibishter told him, Avram, he fulfilled the first part of the promise that you will serve them, you will be enslaved, and they will afflict them. You fulfilled, and then you didn't fulfill it. So the Eibishter says, I have to fulfill it. But if there's a whole tribe who's not going through slavery, how are they going to get that the blessing of the Yetzu B'Chush Godel? So the Rebbe says this is not that they escaped Golus. It's in Golus another detail, Zion. So we can say the explanation, was Shevet Levi. The fact that the tribe of Levi did not have the work of the enslavement is das nicht der Fall, was haben nicht gehabt kein Shaychus to Golus Mitzrayim. It's not because they had no connection to the exile of Egypt. Nor das Gufe is a prat in dem Eufon Hashibut von Eden, but this itself is a detail in the way that the Yidden are enslaved. Der Mekuvon von Shibut Mitzrayim is nicht chas v'sholem zu Peinikun Eden. The intent, why are we enslaved in Mitzrayim? It's not to torture Yidden, nor to leave them v'anoichi alcha. That is so that I can bring you up from there. That's why you have to suffer to fulfill the intent of Mitzrayim. But in order for Hashem to bring up them, ilui was kum der funarois. There is an advantage that comes out as a result from being enslaved in Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim is given akur habarzel. There was a metal kiln. The akur kipshute, as a kiln kipshute was not gepoiled azich. A kiln purifies the metal that you put in there. That purified them. That impact azich. That was the kur Mitzrayim. So that is the intent generally of Golus. Mitzadem koisha shibut ober. But because the enslavement is so difficult, so it would be possible, as nit norvel nit der gerechen durch ein shibud dem ilu, that not only will the Yidden, the Jews, not reach through this shibud the advantage, that zichuch, that refinement, nor adarabbe, but on the contrary, they kennen noch nicht kavern chas v'sholem in Mitzrayim ervas oretz. They might, on the contrary, be sunk in, God forbid, in Mitzrayim, in the nakedness of the land, meaning in the lowest places. The riberot gemus zayin asugiden. So how do we protect that the kiln should not destroy them, but rather to refine them? So therefore, it needed to be a sugid, a category of Jews, bleiben, hecher von dem shibud, that they should remain higher than enslavement. Und sie sollen maschpia sein auf alle Iden, and they should influence on all the Jews, as they sollen durchführen de kavone, that they should fulfill the intent from them Yoradnu for this descent. And Vavodum, Alcha. So they're going to influence that the slavery is not going to bring them down, but it's going to elevate them. Alcha. They'll go out with a great fortune. So that was the Bnei Levi. They were there making sure that the Yidden, in their misery, in their difficulty of the Tzoras HaShibud, aren't going to fail, but they're rather going to be elevated. This was the job of the tribe of Levi. The Ramban is Mevayer, as the Ramban explained. As Minhag B'chol Am, this is a tradition by all people, Liyis Lahem Chachomim Moedei Teirosum, that they have sages, intellectuals that teach their rules. V'lochein, their Torah, V'lochein inich lam Parei Shevet Levi, and that's why Parei left them the tribe of Levi, Shehoyu Chachameim V'zikneim. They were their sages, they were their elders. V'akoil Siba Meis Hashem. This was all a reason, a cause. Hashem caused this to help the rest of the Yidden. Kum tefizeh ois. So according to this, it turns out it's not that these were in exile and they weren't in exile. This was part of the exile. As is nit der pshat, it's not the meaning, it's not what it means as nit ali nom genumen and until shibud Mitzrayim, that it wasn't all Jews who participated, who took part in the slavery of Egypt. Eden seine gekommen came Mitzrayim als ein Am. They came as one people, one nation. Ein Mitzi is one entity. Actually, the pasuk says Kol HaNefesh. Doesn't say even the Foshes. Kol HaNefesh Loshen Yochid Abo Mitzrayim. Shivim, they came 70, all as one. Nor thereby is given Akein Shutfis. But here there was sort of a partnership. Vitzu durchgehend dem Shibud, how to go through this journey of this enslavement. Was jeder Shutef tut sein Chelik euch für einen zweiten Shutef. Every partner does his part also for the other partners. Not that every partner does something else, but we both do both for both of them. The Yisayim is, it's more than just a partnership. Ve'evori hanefesh v'haguf, like the limbs of the soul and the body. Was milui tafkide von jeden Eber b'fnei atzmei, is for dem ganzen nefesh b'shlichusei, fulfilling every limb to fulfill on their own their mission is not just for that limb, but it's for the entire soul, and it's as an agent of the soul for each part to do what they need to do all together. So how did they divide it up? By Kama Yidden is given them lechas hashibud b'poil. By many Yidden, the work of enslavement was literally, in actuality. That was necessary in order to reach that elevation. And how did the tribe of Levi participate? Them koyach, by giving the strength, the indik, moiri, being there the teachers, the Chol Yisrael, Torah. They will moiri Torah, they were teaching Torah to all Yidden. She would not to be sunk in the difficulty of the enslavement. And on the contrary, the Greichen Odem Ilui, to reach this elevation, Shalidei Hashibud, that comes through the slavery. Now, Derech Zeh is given noch Matan Torah in Midbar. Similar was after Matan Torah in the desert, on the Noch B'Knisosim Ba'aretz. And when they get into the Levi always stood out by being the Moirei Derech and being the teachers and not being part of the land. They didn't get an inheritance. The Rebbe continues. Shevet Levi hat nit kechelik v'nachla Eretz Yisrael. They don't have, the tribe of Levi has no portion and no inheritance in Eretz Yisrael. Nor, as the Rambam says, Huvda Lavid es Hashem l'shorsei. He was separated to serve Hashem, to serve Hashem and to l'shoris, to serve Hashem l'hoiris d'rochav ha'yishorim u'mishpotav ha'tzadikim l'harabim, and to teach the correct ways and the righteous laws to the many. This is from Lashon of Rambam. Havayehu nachalosi, and therefore Hashem is his inheritance. Not the land, but Hashem. This has expressed literally in their work and the service they did in the Mishkan. Koilon the Siyas they carry includes also the Siyas Aron. So this was their avoida. Their avoida was to teach the people so that the people can achieve their elevation that the slavery is supposed to achieve. And later on, as they were traveling, this was the Levi. They didn't get a part in Eretz Yisrael, they were teachers. Hashem is their portion, not the land. Really, everybody needed to do work in the Beis HaMikdash. They are just the representatives of the Yidden, as Rashi brings down. The Levim came in their stead as their agents, so they are the ones that did it. Die Avoide, if machen die Welt adirele Yisborich, seien dik in Welt. So they did the Beis HaMikdash work. But who does the work in the general work? That's done by the other Yidden. The Avoide machen die Welt adirele Yisborich, seien dik in Welt. While you're part of the world, that was accomplished by the other tribes of Yidden. But the Levi, their service was not the land, their service was in the Beis HaMikdash. Their service was to teach. Their service was carrying the order. But so now we understand how they got the elevation. You said, well, they didn't serve. Yes, they did. That Avod is brought to them because they were partnership, because they helped. They were part of this whole scheme together with the Yidden, but they did one part of it and the other Yidden did the other part of it. But the end of the day is they were all part of the Shibud Mitzrayim, and therefore they also get the elevation. The Avod the Levim themselves, all of them get it as well. Yes. So now the Rebbe goes back to explain why we needed Tachteyam, because we need some participation. Physically, Levi and Yosef did not participate, but we need Tachteyam. Ches, al pizevet menot verstehen, was Yosef and Levi will also understand why Yosef Leibahom gedarft haben. They needed to have as Menashe Ephraim you tachtein. The Menashe and Ephraim should take their place in the Siyas Arena Shel Yaakov to carrying the Aaron of Yaakov. Even though they themselves don't carry Yaakov's coffin from Egypt, canal, as we said before. But they needed to infuse, to give that power of being higher than Shibud Mitzrayim in the Iberik Shvatim, in the other tribes. And that happens through their agents participate in carrying the coffin of Yaakov. Und der Rebbe hat Yaakov ausgeklebt mit Menashe and Ephraim, and that's why he chose Menashe and Ephraim to sein Tachteim to take their place. Weil sie seien der Hemshech von Yosef and Levi, because they are the continuation of Yosef and Levi. Der Koyach von Yosef and Levi is infused in Menashe and Ephraim, and that's necessary to bring down to the Yidden, and Hecher from Shibud Mitzrayim. Yosef and Levi are higher than Shibud Mitzrayim, that a power kommt der up in der Avodah in Golus. That comes down in the work of Golus. The infusion of the powers of Levi and Yosef were higher than the idea of Golus. Ubifradi Pashtus, especially as literally as Menashe and Ephraim seien geboren geworden in Eretz Mitzrayim, they were born in the land of Egypt. Und Eder Yaakov is dort angekommen before Yaakov came there, so they weren't part of the descent in Golus. Weil Yosef and Levi seien zwei besondere Fanim in the Heder HaShayches zu Shibud Mitzrayim. The Rebbe is going to explain now that the two, Yosef and Levi, are two separate ways in lacking connection to the Shibud Mitzrayim. The Rebbe is einen Euch gewinn besondere Shluchim Menashe and Ephraim. That's why you needed separate agent Menashe and Ephraim, how to deal with the Golus. So they are the Hemshech from Yosef Levi, and they weren't born they didn't descend to Mitzrayim. They were there from before. And there are two ways. There's the way of Menashe, the way of Ephraim. The Rebbe is going to explain now how the Avodah of Menashe, who says Hashem made me forget, and the Avodah of Ephraim, whose name means Hashem has multiplied me, and how this applies to the two ways of dealing, of not connecting to Shibud Mitzrayim. Test. Der Bir was it. Estate Eile Toldos Yaakov Yosef. That the generation of Yaakov is Yosef. Yosef brings down Yaakov's matters to the lower level. It's Mavur as the Inyonim from Yaakov, Vernimshach Lamata the Yosef. They bring down the Yaakov's levels, matters come down below through Yosef. By Yosef, even by Yosef, even as he descended Mitzrayim, as he descends to Mitzrayim, is Meir Badreges Yaakov Begilu. So Yaakov's level still shines fully by Yosef. Und bald as in seiner Avodah is do Begilu the Hashpah for Yaakov versus Hecher from Mitzrayim, since in his service you have openly the influence of Yaakov, which is higher than Mitzrayim, Eile Toldos Yaakov Yosef, that comes down. Is Mitzad Yosef nitokin ort of hell and behester from Mitzrayim. So from Yosef being the continuation of Yaakov, there doesn't exist and doesn't allow for space for the block and the obscurity of Mitzrayim. And his shoylet of Mitzrayim, he dominates Mitzrayim when they're lost nit. The Hell and Behester and Golos Mitzrayim canal does not allow for the block and the obscurity of the exile of Egypt. Masha'enkin Shevet Levi, as opposed to the tribe of Levi, is that a need given shoylet b'Mitzrayim. They were not dominating Mitzrayim. They didn't dominate Mitzrayim. Seine Gewinn in Zman von Golus Mitzrayim, or Levi, Shevet Levi. They were in the time of Golus Mitzrayim. Businessman from Kosha Shibud. They were there during the difficulty of Shibud. Und Afal Pikein, seine sie nicht vertrunken geworden in them, and they didn't get flooded, didn't drown in the Golus Mitzrayim. Levi was there, Shevet Levi. They experienced everything was going on there, and yet it didn't flood them, it didn't drown them. Ba'adrab, Shevet Levi of Eden Bakumen, them koyach, on the contrary, not only did they not drown, the Yidden got their strength to be able to carry through this difficulty of this enslavement. As the Rebbe talked about before, they gave them the power. To the extent that this brings about, you reach the that the advantage of light from darkness. Biz al yidei Moshe v'Aaron v'Shevet Levi, to the extent that the tribe of Levi, that through Moshe and Aaron from the tribe of Levi is given the Geula Shokol Yisrael. That brought the redemption of all Yidden. That was Moshe Rabbeinu from the tribe of Levi. Levi give them koyach to iber machen them golus. Levi gives the power to change around the golus, which means Yosef avoids the golus by doesn't allow. He dominates Mitzrayim. Levi is part of the golus, but he doesn't allow for the golus to Ephraim. These are the two Ephraim and Ashes. Die zwei Yonim kommen arois in und durch seine Shluchim. These two ideas come in and through their agents. Wie die zwei Fani Aveda of Menashe and Ephraim, the two types of service of Menashe and Ephraim. Kemerumas in Zeir Nemen v'Geretam Barucha, as hinted in their names, as spoken in the past at length. Menashe was nikra kach. Why is the name Menashe? Kinashani elikim as kol hamoli as kol beisovi. God has made me forget my efforts, my troubles, and my father's home. That's what Yosef named him Menashe. After all the troubles that Yosef went through, so he called him Menashe. Anoma was the month. This is a name that reminds, as gefindt sich in an Ort was macht vergessen, that he finds himself in a place that makes him forget, as Kol Beis Avi. He's forgetting his father's home. Und der Vater darf wegspringen davon. That's why he needs to jump away from this. Das drückt euch sein Schukke verhechlet nicht zu vergessen. Because he is concerned that he's forgetting Nashani, means that he wants to jump away from that so he doesn't forget. Nor zu sein zugebunden zu Beis Avi, but rather to be connected to his father's home. That was represented by the name Menashe, not to allow for things to be forgetting, but to stay connected, to sein zugebunden zu Beis Avi. Und das ist der Eufen Havoide, was horvet, if nicht zu bewirkt werden von der Sviva. That's the type of work that you put in a lot of effort. You work hard not to be influenced from the surrounding. Durch bleiben zugebunden zu Beis Avi, to stay connected, tied to your father's home. Nashani, not to forget to stay connected. Ayid Zainik in Golus, der Monzach Geseder, when a Yid being in Golus constantly reminds, as a gefindt sich in a Matze, so machen vergessen Beis Avi. You find yourself in a situation that pushes you to forget your Beis Avi. Und das Gufa poilt, so the fact that you know that you're always being pushed to forget, that impacts as a soll nicht vergessen. You shouldn't forget. Der Herr, das ist nicht sein Mokim. He senses this is not his place. Sein Ort is in Beis Avi HaMelech. His house is in his father's house, the king. That's Menashe. Masim to the Avodah von Yosef. This fits the service of Yosef. For Zayniki Mitzrayim is being given while he was in Mitzrayim. It was by him and he sensed the Hashpah of Yaakov Beis Avi, the influence of his father's home. of Yaakov, but his hecher for Golus v'Helam v'Hester from Mitzrayim, which is higher than exile and the block and obscurity of Egypt. Yes, he sensed that he is always connected. Yeshlemer and my timer, we can say for this reason, that Yosef Getainet loy Cain Ovi. That's why he was arguing his father when he wanted to switch the blessing, the right hand on Ephraim, put the left hand on Menashe. This Menashe is the firstborn. Put your right hand on his as mitzad that avedus for Yosef. For Yosef, and Yosef's main avodah is that ikar avodah is Menashe. The main avodah is Menashe, to stay connected, to have his father there. Mashenkin Ephraim werd gerufen azoi. Why do we call him Ephraim? Kifrani elikim be'eretz onyi. In the land of my affliction, I have been fruitful. That Ilui v'Yisrael, the advantage and the greatness was vert oivgiton davki in Chosh Chagolus, that is being accomplished in the exile, the darkness of exile. Bizen ha'ifun ifrani, to make me multi fruitful. Und die Avodah kommt und wird nistai von der Avodah. That Avodah comes and it branches out of the Avodah von Shevet Levi. Was bekoicham und b'shlichusam, in their power, with their mission, their in Iber gemacht, the Jews transformed, changed around them Choshech HaGolus, the darkness of the exile, as they afflicted him, they increased and they multiplied. So Menashe represented his father Yosef, and Ephraim represented the Avodah of Levi, because that's the Avodah of changing around the Golus and bringing it into exile. And as the Rebbe said before, also that Moshe and Aaron from the tribe of Levi were the redeemer of the people. Yud. Steht Neuhe Katzon Yosef. You lead leading sheep, Yosef. So the Yidden are called being led by Yosef. Yidden werden angerufen b'shem Yosef. The Yidden are led. The Yidden Yosef has led. The Eibishter leads the Yidden. The son Yosef. B'shem Yosef. Yosef fed them, and Yosef was there. So he's there. The Yidden are called Yosef, son Yosef. But that doesn't negate the Levi Shleim the Rambam, similar to the Levi, the Rambam writes, as Kedugma Shevet Levi is called Ish V'ish. That just like there was a tribe of Levi, it's really for every person. Ashenot Varuchi, whose heart is, whose spirit is benevolent. Harizen is Kaddish, so he becomes holy. V'hi Havayeh Chelkem V'nachlos Echudu. Hashem becomes his portion, his inheritance, etc. Every Yid has the power of Yosef and Levi to stand hecher from the Golus, to stand above the Golus, higher. Nit nor as the Golus hat nit keshlita for Yid. Not only does the Golus not dominate a Yid, nor verkehrt, but on the contrary, a Yid verta balabos in Golus. A Yid becomes in charge of Golus. When in them seinen Faran the zwei Darge, two levels. Every Yid has Yosef, it's called Neikatzin Yosef, and every Yid could be Levi, as the Rambam says. But there's two levels over here. Früher kommt der Eifung von Yosef, Shu Melech B'Haiva. Comes Yosef, the king, presently. Man stellt sich weg, Hecher von Golus, you put yourself higher than Golus. Man wird in ganzen nicht nispol von den Nishirin Zuchulu von Golus, and you totally become not affected from all the challenges, all the tests that Golus brings. Und noch, and then later, Osid. Rashi says, Yosef Melech, that's present. That's why he doesn't carry the goals. But then Osid, Levi's Osid, noch Osid kommt man zu dem Hechlerneifel. Levi shu Osid losis his Oren. He will be carrying the Oren in the future. Durch dem was men hat dem Inyan HaTorah. Carry the Oren, which means you have the Torah, the Luchas, Torah Oir, the light, Torah Limnit. Is when we turn the darkness of the Golus to light, and we have the Yisrein ha'oir min ha'choshech, the advantage of light from darkness, and to illuminate and lighten up the darkness. So that's the two. Who Melech now, and then the Osid also to change things around. But those wird sein begilui bebies Mashiach Tzidkenu. This will be openly when Mashiach comes. When es wird mekuyim werden der Yud, the promise that will be fulfilled. The Laila kayom yoyer, the night will shine like the day. B'meira v'yameinu mamish, quickly in our days. This is Mesichas Shabbos Parshas Va'era Tov Shin Mem.